notice of this budget workshop meeting of the Upper Township Committee was posted on the official Township bulletin board, mailed to the Cape May County Gazette, the Atlantic City Press, the Ocean City Sentinel-Ledger, the Herald Times, and filed with the Township Clerk. Tonight's budget meeting is being video recorded and will be available on UTTV Channel 97 on the Upper Township website. I hereby direct that this announcement be made a part of this meeting. We will forego the Pledge of Allegiance until we have the regular scheduled meeting at 7:30. So I'm going to turn it over to Committeeman Coggin, who is the chair of our Revenue and Finance, so that we can continue this budget discussion.
All right, thanks, Mr. Mayor. Per the agenda that we laid out last budget workshop, what the intent for tonight is to go through the budget narratives for each department. That'll give any of the committee people an opportunity to ask any questions that we've had as the department heads are going through the narratives. As we are going through the narratives, I want to do it a little bit different this year. We're going to have the department heads actually come up here to make them part of the team. Instead of shouting at each other across the room, it probably makes it a little bit more comfortable for everybody. And I would ask that the committee, as we're going through the narratives, pay particular attention to the handout that you got this afternoon that says 2018 capital request. It's going to be towards the back of your packet. And one of the things that we want to do is we want to address the capital requests for each department as we're going through the narrative. We also want to either confirm whether or not the capital request for that particular department is coming out of either another budget. For example, would not to pick on the clerk's office, but would a replacement computer for the clerk's office be found in the clerk's O&E, or is that something that we've gotten in the computer budget? So we'll kind of go through these with the department heads, so we do have a full understanding of what's going on there. And then as we're going through the capital requests, if you look at the total requests we have for the year, the total requests come up to $3,411,000. So the question becomes, that is money that we would have to bond. So what we want to do is we want to determine, do we want to take a line of credit for the full $3,400,000, which is something that we can actually spend over the next 2 to 3 years, so we don't necessarily have to go for another bond next year. So let's just try to pay close attention to the capital that the departments have asked for, the capital that's required, and keep in mind that the ultimate goal is for us to make a decision on how much capital that we really want to go out for on a bond that would extend into the next number of years. Any questions on that? Okay, so with that, I would ask for Barbara Young, and with any necessary assistance from Barbara Spiegel, to give us a quick breakdown of the narrative for the clerk's office.
Okay. All right. I'm just asking for a slight increase due to increased cost for ordinance publications, advertising.
Actually, if I can interrupt, Barb.
Sure.
Because of other expenditures last year were higher.
Yes.
And I know you asked for an increase. Your budget will actually be decreasing this year, but still taking into account some increases for advertising and some of the other requests that you had. So sitting before the Township Committee, your budget would actually decrease this year as far as your operating expenses.
So you've got some line items that are increasing, but your overall budget is favorable compared to last year.
Yes, and one of the items as far as computer and IT, I believe that's in the IT budget.
The document imaging system.
The document imaging system, which is our scanner, the scanning system that we use to scan ordinances, minutes, and things like that.
That's correct.
That is something that we need to update per the state's requirements, and that is, like I said, that's in the IT budget. So you won't see that in my budget here.
And I will add that that system itself is at the end of its life expectancy. There is no way we can upgrade the system, and that's why we looked last year at, providing a new system to assist the functional.
All right, so with that, my question would be, does that appear on the schedule of capital requests, or is that something that we're looking at doing through the O&E? Okay. All right, and then we can talk about that a little bit more as we get to the computer budget.
Yeah, there are no IT items in the capital request.
Okay, beautiful.
Any questions?
Do we have
Anything
any
else?
cost?
We do,
For the
you do have
document
estimates,
budget,
yes.
I believe it's about $18,000.
18,000 is what we,
And we have that delineated in the O&E too.
What's your?
For the IT.
So we haven't seen any movement on being able to notify through electronic means versus newspapers, right? Or we're paying for advertisements.
No, we're still required to publish, in the legal newspaper of the town.
And how long is that, how long before that law becomes antiquated? Pretty soon we're gonna have to be looking for a newspaper to publish in, because they're folding left and right and getting smaller and smaller.
I mean, my thought is the easiest way to notify people is on our website,
Right, and they are, our documents are posted on the website as well. But there are still legal requirements with advertising. So we are still required to, advertise when we have an ordinance. When it's introduced, we have to publish that in full. When it's adopted, we have to publish a notice of adoption. So there
Maybe
are-
that's something, if we can bring that up in open session or a regular meeting, maybe we can fire off a letter to our, legislators and just tell them to revisit this antiquated system?
I mean, and even for over request, if you could, have the option of sending an attachment versus a printed copy or something.
Well, we do
It should-
that. We are,
Oh, we do? We are
that
doing
is,
that now?
yes, that is, we are allowed to do that. And most times, more often than not, when someone puts in an Oprah request, they will request the document electronically, mainly because that way they don't have to, there's no cost to them if they request it electronically. We're required to submit it electronically if we have it.
And the beautiful thing, and they remain anonymous because they're hiding behind some email name, you don't have to know who it is, and.
Well, they do
They still
typically,
fill out a
yeah,
request,
they'll fill
but-
out a request form, which has all their, all
Mayor,
their
you're
contact
absolutely right, though,
information.
with the new
So-
website that we just introduced and we're going to be talking about tonight during open session, it has all that digital capability.
Yeah, and that's
So-
what I'm thinking. I mean, I would say we could maybe, Curtis, your suggestion, you can maybe, if you want to bring it up during the public, government portion, that's fine. I would also suggest, Barbara, when you're at one of your clerks meetings that you attend, I would bring that up. I mean, let's start to chatter a little bit about it, because it really, it makes sense.
It is an ongoing discussion, but at this time, we are still required, we still have legal requirements
Right.
as far as...
We start writing letters and resolutions to our legislators, that's what they're there for. I mean, they're the ones that come up with these goofy laws, let's try to get them rectified.
Absolutely. Keep it at the forefront.
any other questions for the clerk's office regarding the budget narrative or the required capital? All right, with that, let's move on to the computer budget, and I do want to bring to everybody's attention, there is an updated budget narrative for the computer budget in your packet tonight. And I know, will that be Paul or Scott handling that?
Probably a little bit of both.
A little bit of both?
Yeah, we're going to go back and forth if you don't mind, if that's...
That's great, no.
Okay.
Well, this year we kind of, because we knew that this was going to be, taking a look at, we kind of broke the computer budget, and I'm looking at the summary page that we prepared, into, I'll say, 4 different sections, so that, you know, you can kind of get a flavor and a feel for what 4 different areas that we look at for expenditures. The first section is computer services, and those are annual or monthly services that we procure to keep our computer infrastructure working. So the first one, we have our monthly service with Ansero to keep all the computers up and operational. It is a subscription service that allows that if we have an issue, we call up, they respond, you know, to any of our employees, and it gets handled pretty expeditiously, and usually first time everything gets done and taken care of. They make sure all the computers are patched, security is updated, they're monitoring our sonic walls to make sure everything is functioning with our network so that we can communicate between here, Public Works, and EMS, and everything's functional. The monthly data backup, the Ansero data, that is, you know, essentially our solution for continuity of government and backing up. You know, back traditionally, you know, traditional backups were always, hey, let's keep a daily backup, a weekly backup, a monthly backup, a yearly backup. But the focus in looking at backing up is more continuity of government. So right now, what we proposed, and we started last year when we went with Ansero, and they kind of want that to make sure that, hey, everything is secured. So we have a device in our server room that backs up the information incrementally every day. At the end of that day, they put the information up to 2 spots within the cloud. So it's, you know, they have a location kind of like on the East Coast and the West Coast of the United States, so that if, you know, obviously if a catastrophe of a national extent, you know, you're not going to usually have 2 events that would affect those cloud servers on either side. And that allows us to restore and operate almost at the flick of a switch, where before, when we would have a backup disk, we would have to bring that disk, find a server to load it up and to back it up. You know, God forbid if something happened here in this building. This data backup, as you recall, we can go to anywhere that has off-site internet connection and, you know, log on to Datto, and we can spin up any one of our servers remotely from any location. So, you know, say for instance, if Town Hall burnt down tomorrow, we could go to the community center, we could go to Barb's house, we could go to another location, fire up that server, and you know, essentially be back up and running within a couple hours of doing it. So that's
basically any web-enabled device has access to all of our server information in our archives.
correct. Obviously, the endpoint security, you know, that's you know security for our servers. What we're paying for the committee video recording, that's for the actual person to sit here and do the video recording, as well as after the meeting's over to convert it to be able to send it to social media and UTTV.
Just 1 second. So we have monthly patching service backup, and then we have monthly data. We have monthly data backup, and then we have monthly email backup. So why is our email separate from the data?
Yes. The data, the monthly data backup is what's on our server. What we back up, all the different files and things that we create here at Township.
But isn't the email on our files too?
No, we subscribe to Office 365, so all of our emails are on the cloud at Office 365.
Well, they're not on the cloud because we all have thumb drives this time. So,
Well, that's not your email. That's the.
well, that needs to be rectified. That's a priority.
And that's been done.
We'll be implementing that for the next meeting.
Yes.
And then the email backup is making sure, because we have obvious OPA requirements of making sure that emails are fully backed up and archivable and retrievable for the required statutory period. We don't rely on if any one of the users decides to delete an email and feel that it's gone on their computer or their Outlook account. As a township, we have that backup of both incoming and outgoing.
And we're supposed to notice at this level, and they don't know it at the federal level.
Well, they know at the federal level, they just hit it with hammers.
They just erase it on the room.
So and the monthly patching service, that's essentially for, the first part is for regular users like myself and everybody at Town Hall, Public Works, and EMS that are full-time users that sit at a computer. That's what the monthly service for. The monthly patching are for like the committee tablets and, the computers that don't have a regular person attended to it. The computer that runs the committee meetings. If you ever noticed that at the tax window, they have a computer there. So the windows that don't have a full-time person utilizing it, but we still want to make sure that on a regular basis, especially for security reasons, that they're getting the updated patches of Windows and all the other things. So they make sure that all those computers are updated and patched, because obviously everybody knows if your computer's not updated and patched, that's where security vulnerabilities come in, and then that's where you can come in and get hacked and stuff like that. So it's really
Kind of like changing the oil in your car. If you don't change the oil in your car's going to eventually stop running. And that's the same essential thing.
Those of us that went to the GIF update,
What's that? Sorry?
they covered that.
Exactly. There you go.
How much of a difference of budget for the monthly service and backup and everything is this compared to what we've been paying in the past?
from last year, it's actually went down.
Went down $3,000 just for the month.
All right, so I'll go back 2 years.
I don't have the figures 2 years ago, Rich. I could get them, but I don't have them with me right now.
Well, I do recall somewhere around $65,000 in 16. So that was
Now we're at
total-
90,000.
That was total expenditure.
No,
No, I'm talking about
I
just
will
that,
say-
I'm talking about just that service line.
I will say with hacking and everything else that's going on, we want to secure our information, but this is really becoming a huge part of this budget.
Well, but
So in other words, what you're saying, that 34 units are desktop units that people have access to.
there are 34 usernames that have a desktop computer and are using their
If
computer
you ever
every
look
day.
and try to limit the amount of units that we have to try to.
Well, you'd have to get rid of a body to get rid of those units.
So every unit has a body to it.
Yes. And we actually just did an audit verification within Sarah in auditing the user name and the person that's attached to that
To
computer.
ensure we weren't being overcharged.
What about the question I have along the same lines is what about the 16 computers or 16 units that are not dedicated? So for example, I see 5 right up here with the committee. And you mentioned there's one at the tax office at the window.
There's
One
one
at
that
the
sits
clerk's
behind
office.
here.
Okay.
There's one at the clerk's office. There's
2 at the
like-
clerk's office, actually. The scanner and the fish and game.
So what exactly does that mean, they're not dedicated?
Excuse me?
What does that mean?
Well, those are computers that are patched. That's under the monthly patching service within Sarah. There's
Well, and especially,
two or
that's in-
there's like I think three at EMS. So there's the laptop that records the meetings here. There's EMS. I mean, OEM has 4 or 5 laptops that are attributable to different departments and uses. So and that was part of the auditing process that we did. That we I created that list, and I could be happy to share it with committee so that you can see where each of those computers are tallied and located at.
Okay. Yeah, I was just a little surprised at the number. I didn't realize that there were that many out there.
I mean, when you really look at it, the township is run on computers at this point. There's not a function within the township government. There's not an office in the township that can't function without the use of a computer or connecting to our network or email. Literally today, every office is on the computer. When you look at industry standards of what computer budgets should look at between I'll say what their gross revenue or in this case what our budgets are, they look between 1.5% to 2% of your budget is kind of on national average geared towards IT
Technology.
infrastructure and security. So if we're looking at a $12 million budget, we should be spending between 1.5 little over $2 million, or $200,000 on a computer budget to keep things operational.
For people that work in corporations, though, there's a lot more data that comes out of that spending than what we get. Meaning metrics, who's doing what when, how many are being, and I'll use pharmacy as an example. How many prescriptions are filled an hour, how many things are being entered in an hour, how many data entry things are being done. Those reports that are generated, so if a company's spending that type of money, we probably need to start utilizing what we have in place more at least better than what we're doing now.
I mean, I would say every department head that you come up here and ask, what they're doing, as far as their budget line items, ask them. What,
Right, so
if they didn't have
I
the
hate to
computer
digress, but
activities?
this is the thing that's driving me crazy. So you saw the $10,000 admin's fee, but what is that for?
That,
Edmunds runs our finance program, our tax program, what else does it do? It supports our HR. There was a time that we ran payroll on Edmunds.
What does
so
it
that still
say
has
with
to be
that?
supported.
I just really need to have an understanding as
That-
to
that
why we
10,000
have,
And Sarah basically protects everything.
I get that, but why are we not running under one system where we have one source?
And Sarah protects all of our computers, but then every office or multiple offices need different programs. The
Right.
construction office has one program, finance tax has another program. That's
has another program.
engineering has another
We
program.
have, the clerk's office, I can think of 5 programs that we are required to use.
And some are locally based programs, hardware, software, and some are subscription programs. And this, we're not doing anything different than there are many other municipalities, both here in Cape May, Atlantic County, and across the state of New Jersey.
I mean,
Edmunds is actually a program that is unique to, or is unique to most municipalities. Most of your municipalities has Edmunds, and it's been a program that's been around for many, many, many years.
And if I can add that the amount that we pay to Edmunds, I don't think has changed in 5 years,
Oh, at
in
least
10
that.
years. That has stayed constant. Those fees for Edmunds have not increased. We have support with them anytime we have any issues. You call on the phone and you have support with them. Just as I do with my payroll program, a lot of our programs, we have support.
But all those programs have to interface with our network systems here. So there is a collaboration and an integration that has to go on. Oftentimes, Edmunds is very familiar with their software, but they're not as familiar with network technical issues and things, and that's where we turn to Aunt Sarah to put the two of them together. And it's not just Edmunds, there's many different programs that we've run into that same situation where we've needed their technical assistance, because honestly, Paul and I are just not at that level where we can provide that.
So the next section is really our software maintenance and annual support. Those are some of the various programs that operate within the township. You mentioned the Edmunds, the engineering software, the GIS and the CAD programs. That's the mapping programs and CAD software that I prepared all my maps and drawings with. National Time, that's the time clock that everybody punches in throughout the township. I think everybody except for Beach Patrol is on that system.
Correct.
Power DMS, that's something that we use for our document control system for a lot of our different policy manuals and everything. The WTH GIS, that's used between both Public Works and OEM for their graphical interface with the GPS in the trucks, and also mapping for various events and categories. Hobie, if you remember all the maps that were created for the different events, to be able to have those kind of things,
4th of July.
all in fireworks, all those maps were created through the W2H system.
And our fire districts, they also share in that.
The domain name registration and hosting, that's to keep our different .com and .gov addresses registered with the government, the agencies, to make sure that we can communicate with the outside world. Office 365, we have 2 different levels of Office 365. We have the one that is internal to the different users that have Word and Excel and the full Office package on computers. The other ones are the various people that have emails and just have online access. Essentially, as we discussed, I think over the last 2 years, we ramped and included all of our employees, both full-time and part-time, so that way we can communicate with Power DMS and all of our things, so that if we have important bulletins and stuff like that, we can communicate to all of our employees effectively through email and calendar.
And that also fits in with our policy regarding email usage and not using a personal email as opposed to the township.
One quick question here. I see website domain registration. It appears as though, is that a duplicate line item or?
No, we have the domain name registration, so it's each year you have to register with the internet group on, that domain name belongs to the township and it points to where we need it to point to so that we get the information electronically. And then the hosting is, out in the web. We have our website hosted by a.
Oh, okay. All right. I missed the word hosting there. So really, it's more web hosting than it is domain registration.
It's a combination of both. It's a combination of both. Yearly, the domain name itself, you're talking about, that's about $100 a year. For the .com, the .gov is around $400, and then we just did Bluehost. I think it was about $10 a month. I think it was. I forget what the exact, because we just changed vendors for that.
Okay.
That would cover for that. So that's kind of software and annual management reports. Those are programs that we need to do our daily business, and those are kind of, I'll say, almost a non-discretionary kind of thing. You need those programs to operate and communicate with the outside world nowadays. Hardware replacement, we're putting in this would be a small contingency of, if we have to replace a computer or something like that, a lot of times we will try to, if a department's office needs a new computer or printer, if we try to attempt to budget that to their line item or O&E as it comes up, but if they don't, towards the end of the year, if they don't have the budgetary line items, that's where those funds come from. Projects are really I'll say the largest non-discretionary. That's where we have the flexibility in how we program what we want to do for the year as a project. So we have those outlined there. There was the first one is the website redesign. There was a portion that was authorized, and when it just wasn't, it was supposed to be budgeted in 2017, but through the budgetary procurement process, it just did not get allocated to the 2017 budget. It's already been encumbered, so it's money that we have, we essentially have had the work done, but we have to spend the money in 2018. The special event taping, we had this line item in for last year. We didn't really utilize any of those funds because we were able to get, a better partnership, I'll say, with Ocean City High School to get some of their students to come out and do some videotaping. They helped us out with both Fall Fest and the tree lighting ceremony. So we, if from a discretionary standpoint, if that would be a line item the committee didn't want to hold in there as a placeholder to, to pay somebody to come out and do something, that's something I think we have a fairly good relationship now building with Ocean City High
Absolutely,
School.
and we're going to continue that, just so the committee knows, that relationship with the Ocean City High School, because that benefits us, obviously, from the financial standpoint, but it also benefits the kids over there that are being instructed on how the proper way to do a lot of this filming and some of the things that they have as part of their curriculum. So it kind of works both ways. So we'll continue on those efforts as special events.
But we almost need to leave tonight, don't we?
Just in case.
We're not in session in summer.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep.
And they are students, though, even though, you can somewhat rely on them.
Reliability could be a factor from time to time. They've been very good, when we set something up in advance, their teachers have lined the kids up, and it's worked quite well.
Yeah, I know we were worried about the summertime because school's closed. And for 4th of July, if we do any filming there, then we have to outsource that.
And there's always that possibility. That's kind of why we built this into the budget. Correct.
The next line is the Active Directory update and merge with Office 365. This is more of a wish list of probably every employee here at Township Hall. probably implore you to keep this in the budget. This is because we have essentially two different logins and passwords that they have to remember. One is
As well as
for,
the committee. Committee has that same.
not as, if you remember, you have a login when you log into your tablet, and then you have a separate login and password for your email address. This would merge the two.
Yeah, but
So-
that's not safe. You're supposed to have double authentication.
Well, that's not double authentication. Double authentication would be having that one login and password, and then double authentication would be authenticating to a cell phone or fingerprint or something like that.
No, I use two different systems. When I log into my computer, I have to use two different codes.
Actually, Active Directory in your system, since we're talking about that, you have Active Directory on your pharmaceutical. If you're using Windows, this is something that was, when we originally had some of our other vendors that we used in computers for the township, as it moved across over the years and changed from one to the other, they never really set up Active Directory. And this is going way back. This is, many years back. So this is what we're trying to do. We're trying to get Active Directory properly installed with this particular line item so that the functionality is the way it should be. When you sign in, it's not two separate sign-ons, and I know what you're saying, but that
What
is
I do is I sign on to get on to Windows.
Right.
And then when I go into the VPN, I have one of those ID access that changes
And
numbers
that
every minute.
that is dual authentication. That's something different than what we're talking about here, however.
The next one would be the Sonic Wall Reporting Analyzer. That would be allowing Insero to really dig down and drill in to get reports from our Sonic Walls, to know and get reports, hey, what users are going to what websites, are they going to places that they shouldn't be, and having that reporting come in on a monthly or weekly report so it can be available to be reviewed. I mean, the data is always there, that if we feel that something's a problem out there, we can always drill down and go query that report, but this would allow all the reports to be generated and come in and then flagged more automatically.
And it's not going to bottleneck individual operations. It's more there to, like you said, analyze what's going on so that we can take a better look at that. And if necessary, if somebody's doing something either inappropriate or more time consuming, not associated with work activities, then that can be addressed.
So we're using it to police.
It's policing our networks. Correct.
Upgrading the Wi-Fi at Town Hall. The Wi-Fi, when it was set up, could have been set up a little more securely to separate. Right now, the Wi-Fi and our internal network are on essentially the same IP scheme, so they are, even though they are separated with usernames and there is a private and public side, the better security protocols to kind of truly separate them and firewall them separately, and as well as, there are a couple spots within Township Hall where connectivity is not, the best, and so this would provide better connectivity for Wi-Fi throughout Township Hall.
And more specifically, there's two locations here, the committee room, and then also in the back hallway where the communication center is. Just requiring two additional, what they call pucks, that would provide a better enhancement of Wi-Fi. Not only for the public sitting out here, but obviously for committee as well.
The next two items are both server consolidations. We put them in there. I don't know if that's really a high priority project. Because our servers are functioning well right now, this would allow, if we could consolidate it, we could consolidate all of our servers to one main server, two servers here at Township Hall, and we would provide the services out to those secondary departments, make backups and that continuity of government pull, bring back to life, a little bit easier and more robust. But our network is functioning at this point, and I would say that would be, of all the projects, those two are probably of the least priority.
Well, let me maybe put the brakes on you here a second. You're looking at $7,000 for them. Is that a one-time, non-recurring type of expense that will be there?
Yeah.
Now, with that,
And you're going to also reduce you're going to remove the servers from those other 2 locations. So,
Okay.
and consolidate it in one. So therefore, you wouldn't have maintenance, you wouldn't have any of the monitoring or anything like that on those other servers.
So that's kind of where I'm headed, is if that consolidation occurs, then that all gets rolled into what Encero's doing. Now, if that consolidation does not occur, is Encero still managing to back up those 2 servers?
Absolutely.
All right, will
Now,
there,
I will say for EMS, initially because of the original carrier that we used, and without making this too technical, we now have Comcast. So our fiber connection between all 3 buildings is much better, it's enhanced. We had to initially, which we're paying about $168 per month, for the backup of the EMS building, which that will go away. We're in the process of migrating that backup over from that building to our building. So that's the kind of thing that we can look forward to with a move like that. That's the reason we were recommending it. But again, it's not a priority for 2017. It could be easily pushed back, or 2018. It could be pushed back to 2019 if you feel that's necessary.
Will we get a reduction in backup costs if we do that?
That's that 168 per month, yes, EMS.
for each server?
For the EMS.
For the EMS? What about for the Public Works?
No, and a lot of that was tied to the Active Directory because the Active Directory for EMS was on a separate system.
Okay,
They had to, from a data backup, and because of connectivity, they were backed up separately, so they needed their own data backup drive separately.
Right.
Whereas Public Works and Town Hall were always, when we developed Public Works server, they were always connected on the same Active Directory network
And it was a connection where it was capable of handling that backup. That was the key with the EMS. It just, that connection between us and EMS at the time was not something that provided us a steady, reliable, stable connection. So we had to go with that extra piece of equipment and the extra cost per month. But it was something that I knew was going to come to an end, and we're working on transitioning away from that 168 per month.
okay.
The next 3 items are kind of connected, and we touched on these earlier when we were discussing with Barbara. This is the Alchemy migration to an updated system. Alchemy's reached its end of life. They no longer support Alchemy as far as new versions, especially for security upgrades as you move through with different versions of Windows. So it does leave us vulnerable with the archival of our system. So that, that first line item is very necessary. The next 2 items for the archiving of the construction department and the planning and zoning, that would help. If you visit our construction code officer's office, you'll see that he's got about 10 or 15 banker boxes in his office, and those are files that we don't have room to put in drawers. And he's probably got about, if you look around the office, there's probably about another 10 boxes of files that are sitting out and about, and some of the drawers we have to take out where you physically can't put your finger in between the files because they're just so full. So, so from an integrity, long-term storage, we'd like to scan those so that way they can be electronically archived, and then those paper records can be destroyed in
How long
accordance
are
with
we
regulations.
obligated to keep that stuff?
Forever, or actually not for the life of the structure.
10 years after life.
Therefore, we go back to the whole scanning system with you.
Yes. And the scan, if we had these items scanned, I would say probably at least a third of the Oprah documents that are requested through Barbara's office
Or construction.
are looking at construction and zoning
Yes.
files, and that if it was electronic, not that it probably would take
Easier to find, locate,
And-
less time consuming.
less time consuming, and essentially you query it and say, I need lot and block of this, you pull it up, and you send an email of these tag files over to the clerk's office, and then she can email it over here, as opposed to first going and finding the paper copy, making copies of the paper copy, and then giving them to Barb, and then she's got to process those to get them to the person that they're looking for.
And to completely answer your question, there's a state retention schedule that every municipality must apply to and conform with regarding how long we have to keep the different records.
So, those are the projects, yes, we're seeing an increase in, the computer budget, but I think if everybody can think back 10, 20 years of where we were on a computer technology standpoint, and you think of where we are today, I think every department can say that if they're not using one computer program more, they're using 4 or 5 computer programs more that their office is relying on.
From a security standpoint and what we've heard on the news and locally in Kingston County, Atlantic County, that we heard through our JIF representatives attending different meetings, that this is something is really at the forefront with every municipality, looking at security. And it's not a matter of if you're going to get hacked, it's basically when you're going to get hacked in some form, whether it's...
And how much damage.
And how much damage. So the key here is not to say that anybody is 100% not vulnerable, but it's how well you back your systems up. So that when you do go into that disaster recovery mode, how quickly can you recover from that? And what we have been given the assurance through Cero and what we've tested, and we're going to, by the way, have another test this coming year to actually exercise our capabilities to ensure what Cero says will happen, that we can easily and we will quantify how fast we can recover from an event. Like we said, tax collection office, clerk's office, engineering, a lot of these places bring in money to us. If we're down for an extended period of time, we're technically losing money, and we're also providing an inconvenience to the residents because we cannot provide those services to them. So we looked at parts of these, especially the backup, as an insurance to ensure that doesn't happen. So, and it's, when Paul hit on the percentages of overall budgeting, we looked at it as a rather small amount. And if we do, Mayor, going back to your original question, back in 2016, if we combine that 65,000, that was just...
Your budget is 49,000 more this year than last year, so that's just in 1 year, over the total.
And the reason why it is mostly because of the projects that we were looking at.
Let me ask you a question. What's the $10,000 cover?
For the construction and planning.
What does that cover?
Yes,
That's taking, about half of the records out of each of those departments and having them scanned and archived.
So in other words, that's somebody scanning.
The company.
The document.
It is a professional scanning document.
Yeah.
It's not a township employee?
No.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is there any way we can do that in-house?
No.
No.
Okay,
Yeah, and the other thing too is, in my experience with this particular company and companies like that, when they come in, they actually do measurements of your file drawers, and that's how they determine their price. But when they actually go through the count, it's usually less than what your overall, the final invoice that comes through is in most instances less than what your actual budget.
And then the 18 grand that Barb's talking about, that's hardware.
That's
Yes.
a replacement, yes.
Yes, that's
It's
to replace the
theoretically
system
what we
that
could do here, and I was kind of taking a few notes. We could theoretically take $50,000 out of this budget, which is strictly, basically O&E, and put that $50,000 on as part of the capital and part of the bond. So with that, it would not, affect the overall tax rate going forward.
John, I don't know. I would have to do a little research. The Alchemy system, that if that's hardware, a capital item has to last, have a useful life of 5 years. Scanning for the construction and planning and zoning, that's not bondable. The hardware, I'd need a little more information on replacing the Alchemy system. That may or may not be bondable.
Okay.
A lot of the IT costs probably are not bondable.
The Alchemy system, is that something that we can lease?
When we looked at the cost comparison between purchasing the software, and most of it's software costs, not the hardware, when we looked
okay.
at purchasing that and got the price quotes and did our comparisons between 3 different vendors that we got prices from, both of them offered solutions of, like right now, currently we own the license for the software and we have it installed, and we pay a small monthly or yearly subscription fee for annual updates and maintenance of it. When we looked at compared to that, or compared to their online cloud solution, and especially when you get into data archiving, what really you get caught up in is they give you a little bit better price on the software, but then they hit you on the data storage charge.
On the retention, yeah.
And when you look at, you know, maybe 10, 15 years ago, you know, it was really cost prohibitive to say, hey, I'll put in a 5 terabyte hard drive on my server, you know, but today I can put a 5 terabyte, you know, 3 redundant RAID drive, you know, so essentially I'm buying almost 15 terabytes of hard drive, so it's all redundantly backed up on it for pennies on the dollar compared to if I'm paying somebody on the cloud to store it there. So, you know, when we looked at the price quotes, it was more cost effective to purchase the license of the software, so we had, you know, essentially had the license, and then, you know, this company that we had the lowest price from actually had a very inexpensive annual subscription fee, you know, or annual maintenance support fee comparative to the other 2 vendors that we looked at. So in this case, I think what we've presented here, when you looked at the 3, you know, because this isn't just a budgetary line, you know, we actually have hard quotes.
Okay.
So you know, and Barb's taken a look at them, and Scott's looked at them, that, you know, what we presented is really the most cost effective, and I even amortized it out over 10 years, because if you look at the year 1 cost, obviously of a cloud solution, but then when you start putting that over 5 or 10 years, and since we have to maintain this data for very, you know, we're not talking about short retention period, you know, like for budgetary documents and correspondence, you know, you're talking about 3-5 year retention period. You know, here we're talking about, you know, life of a home, 30 years plus another 10 years after. You're talking about 40-year retention periods for these things. It's more cost effective to pay for the computer software and then house the data here.
Okay, so the data will live with us.
The data will
Okay.
live with us as part of that, of our backup, yes.
All right. Any more questions for the computer budget? All right, Paul, it looks like you're still up with the engineering.
Looking at my budget request sheet, you know, I always put in a line item, $8,250 for surveying. That's to cover miscellaneous surveying, or especially if we get a state aid grants where we have to go out and survey a street because we got a road grant for it, and we need that money available to do that. The planning re-exam for wastewater management plan, $8,000. That's, I gave a brief little synopsis at the last meeting, and that would be, you know, essentially for looking at, you know, we've had some requests from Strathmere about doing, I'll say a mini re-exam for that portion of the township to kind of look to see about, you know, how we can maybe, you know, affect how construction is going on over there, maybe enhance some different zoning criteria to make it a better livable community for what they're requesting. And so to have that dialogue and discussion with them, you know, we have a budget estimate from a planner that we're currently working with the housing items. This would, you know, cover, you know, having some public meetings with the residents over in Strathmere, and, you know, to go through that process of developing ordinances and the like.
You've also mentioned in there wastewater management.
Yeah, I mean, most of that is going to be tied up for that. I wasn't sure, but the county's going to be covering most of that end of it. So from a summary standpoint, it's really going to be from a planning re-exam, not really wastewater management plan, because wastewater management plan, the county is in the process, if you recall, you know, they're doing that process and actually through May. So I don't anticipate needing any funds in that line. The other part of the O&E is $4,000 for miscellaneous expenses as far as seminars, dues, and office supplies and cell phones. Then you have the various different projects and items. This is our last year for the conversion of the digital tax map. So they have about about 8 or 9 sheets to complete this year, but then a lot of what's going to come up is the certification with the state. If you recall, when we started this process and the last revaluation, part of the stipulation of them agreeing to accept our tax maps for that revaluation was that we would start this process of digitizing our tax maps, and this is just our final cost. And actually, when you look at how much we paid for that, I recall seeing in the newspaper that I think we did this for just about $125,000 in that ballpark. Lower Township, they had a vendor doing it, and they're spending $750,000 on digitizing their tax maps.
Now, when this cost of $39,000 finishes up this year, then all we have is ongoing maintenance.
We'll have ongoing maintenance.
And what does that amount to on an annual basis?
I think previously, when we had that same surveying company do that, I mean, a lot of that depends on it, probably in $1,000 to $2,000 range.
A year.
But a lot of it depends on, how many subdivisions and how many changes.
Gotcha.
We did make a change with our fee ordinance so that, for major subdivisions and those kind of changes, we have a fee that the subdivider has to pay, $100 a lot that's created. So that'll cover most of those costs. So you're at that point, you're talking about lot consolidations that kind of come in, or people come in and say, hey, I have a new property survey, and you say it's X on the tax map, and it should be Y, so making those other odd changes that aren't covered from the planning and zoning board changes.
Okay.
And then you got DEP fees. I should have taken this off of my summary as far as the gypsy moth spraying. We don't really need for gypsy moth spraying. I did confirm and verify with the Department of Agriculture that when they did the survey in the fall, that they had no critical mass areas of gypsy moth caterpillar egg masses, so we would not require any gypsy moth spraying.
And that has been removed from your worksheet.
From the budget, okay.
You've got the Stockton, 4 quarterly surveys. Dr. Farrell put in a proposal similar to what we've done for the last 2 years after the Army Corps Beachville, and he provides us those quarterly Beachville surveys. And then the last was, if you remember, we had that discussion regarding Sam's Gulf as far as whether or not we wanted to, take that next step and, essentially to remediate the property and remove what contaminated soil is there, believing that we can receive a 75% grant from the DEP Open Space Conservation Grant, and then we needed just under $29,000 to cover the rest of those costs.
Is that bondable?
I believe so, and I've moved it to the bond. We would have to, because we do not have that grant now, even though we may intend to apply for it, we don't have it right now. We would have to budget for that full amount. So I have $115,000 in the capital request.
Okay.
And just my last thing, as far as capital requests, I did put in, I'll say the next batch of roads for the road paving project that you're going to look at doing roads.
If let's talk about that for the roads. You're looking at $1.5 million there.
Yes. I mean, and that's really, that's about what we've done. I'll say the last 2 road paving projects we've essentially have done. Instead of trying to do, I'll say a small to moderate sized project on an annual basis, to kind of get a better pricing. When you jump up into that dollar value, you can see a 10 to 15% savings
in the
unit pricing. So, the last two times that we did a paving project, and obviously in 14 and 16, so we did, I think $1 million, just over $1 million in the 2014, though I think that bond was, I think, 1.3 million, and, just from budgetary savings, that's how much we even saved just from that standpoint. And then in 2016, we had a 1.5 million budget, and the contract came in at $1.4 million. And in both times, the 2014, we did about 5 miles of road. 2016, we did 5.5 miles of road. I'm proposing about just under 5.4 miles of road, that need to be done. And talking to Roy with Public Works, we might add maybe one or two other streets just to kind of, iron this out. But, now we're starting to get into the streets these are streets that were constructed, I'll say, in the early 80s to mid 80s, that are really, and that when you start to think about that generation of streets, that's when the boom of when the streets were built in the township. So, we kind of have to keep up a pace of resurfacing and maintaining our infrastructure, because, there's still another 10 miles of street beyond this that are in that next phase of they're starting to deteriorate and get worse. And
Well, let's talk a little bit about that next phase. I mean, this, if we're looking at $1.5 million here, how far does that carry us out before we?
We probably need to spend $1.5 million for the next 5 years.
yeah, I mean, every I was kind of looking at it, when we started this back in 2013 was that budget year. I was anticipating every 3 years to kind of prorate that out, figuring, it's about $500,000 a year to on an annual basis, that just to keep up. Because, I know that the Public Works had a successful crack sealing program, but, that's just to keep those streets that are.
That's a Band-Aid.
As a Band-Aid, just so that they don't get real bad.
I mean, it's cheaper to repave them and resurface than reconstruct, and then we have to look at, we're doing a lot of stuff on this isn't gonna be popular, but we're doing a lot of stuff that could be assessed to homeowners, curb, sidewalk, all that. A lot of that stuff the township's not obligated to do.
Well, I'm not doing curbs and sidewalks. I mean, most of these streets is just,
We have in the past, though, we've done
Yeah,
curbs and
yeah, we have
sidewalks,
done.
aprons, all that.
oh yeah, these are all have aprons and.
We are not obligated to do the aprons. I mean, statutorily, we can assess the homeowners.
Yeah, but, so how do you justify what has been done?
Well,
For the other,
someday we're gonna pull the plug.
I get it, but all the other streets that were done in the past, 3 or 4 years weren't assessed that, so
Well, I mean,
I think we
that's,
should stay consistent until we get through.
well, we
what needs to be
consistent till
done.
what? Till we can't afford to do it anymore? Well, we've hit that point.
Paul, let
I mean,
me,
my thought is if we're gonna bond or think about doing this, I mean, the interest rates are going to go up. We'd probably be better off doing, a double project and get a bond that's at a less interest rate and, drag it out over X amount of years, than to, keep doing 5, 5, and 5 when we know, or at least that's what they're saying, that the interest rates in the next, year are gonna probably go up, 2 or 3, maybe 3 points. So, and that's based on how the economy's doing. So, I think we really need to evaluate that, because we get better bang for the dollar at this point from an interest standpoint. If we're gonna bond, we might as well, look at, doubling the project or something. If that, that's my thought. I don't know how you guys feel about it.
And just to note,
Like, I don't want to drive the committee or the township into debt, but, we've been able to handle the bonds that we've had so far. And partly because we were literally borrowing money for practically nothing. I mean, we were down at 1% or, half
Below
the
fraction,
1% for closed
So it
schools.
really is, we're getting dollar for dollar almost. And that's why, what concerns me is if we have a number of roads that, need to be done, maybe the time is to double up on it and get one bond, you know, and consider that because of the interest rates. I mean, just a thought, I'm not saying you should do it.
No, and the other thing too, just, you know,
We'll talk about
Yeah,
that.
but Paul, you have a pretty good handle on as far as
You have your
longevity of these
list, right?
streets and where we're headed.
I mean, even like Caledonia and all that, they were done like in 83, 84,
Right.
and
And
that
there-
area needs to be done.
And you know what? A street like Caledonia, you know, because if you look at I've got 5.4 for this, I've got like 13.8 on the list to be rehabilitated. Caledonia is not even on that 14 miles.
Like that area
And-
there,
And
That's
within
a
5-6 years, you know, that's what I'm saying. I'll say 14 miles on my list right now. I'm saying we should do 5 and 5.4 this year, miles. You know, as we do this one, you know, like, I didn't add as many streets on this time as I did from the previous time, but those streets that were all built in those mid-80s, Caledonia, you know, that whole,
I hope,
that whole
I mean,
area.
the whole area.
the whole, up and down, I mean, you just drive down Route 9 and you can just go.
But some of them are older than others. I mean, like Ashcroft and Belcroft and all that are older than Caledonia.
Right.
There's some that are still in pretty good shape,
Yeah.
but we're at a point where we're
But
gonna
that,
have to do a complete
when
inventory.
Paul was talking
of
about
streets and see what
construction,
needs to
that's
be
the
done.
construction of the mid-80s.
Yeah. Well, you got Indian Walker was 82 or 83. I mean, Caledonia was 87, 88. 89.
Oh, I think it was before that.
No,
No,
it was 87 or 88.
no, actually it was 86, because
I think it was
I was
before that.
the second
I had a lot
house.
of friends that live on that street, and they moved in there way before that.
Actually, my senior year in high school, I was the second house built on Caledonia, so, at 86, 87.
What would it take to do an inventory of all the streets? And know where we stand.
I had gotten price quotes, it was for, to come in and do, essentially, you have now they do it with a truck, and it has radar and sonar on it, and, you know, it's about $20,000 to come in and drive this.
Why can't we just do a visible inspection?
Oh, that's how I'm,
You know,
that's how I'm
like
doing
guys that
these.
drive around these streets every day, I mean, you know,
That's how,
they have a pretty good idea what streets are bad, what aren't, start taking notes of what may have to be done. Just a visual inspection right now.
Windshield is
What's that?
I just think we need to do a good inventory, because I do foresee interest rates going up, and, you know, let's take advantage of the lower rates that we still have available to us.
And also,
And then the other thing is, too, just-
We have doing projects in town too, so I mean, it may be time to jump on board and try to
I mean,
design.
my only pitch that it might not be a bad investment, I know 20,000 seems like a lot, but when you do it that way, it's not I'll say an arbitrary, or it's a very scientific method of, you know, it's grading it, and then you have a given criteria and you know what it is. Whereas whether it's me going out or in Public Works going out, it's more of an estimation, and, so you do get, you know, because that's how we did my initial survey back when I started back in 2000. You know, that's when this last survey was done, was, you know, between 99 and 2000, was to go through all the streets and create that inventory. But, you know, again, it hasn't been totally updated street by street. But
Well, now's the time to
Is, Ed mentioned something here, and county's doing a paving project supposedly on Course and Tavern Road sometime in, I don't know, they're 3 years into planning it now, so I mean,
Yes.
I gotta believe maybe in 3 or 4 years.
the last year and a half, Dale has told me it's coming out in the spring, so.
Yeah. That would be, is there any way we can partner, whatever, we can bid our project with their project and try to get it?
On that project, you can't, because that project he bids out, it's got federal funds in it.
Okay.
And so he has to bid that project separately because of how he moves the dollars around. You know, and his other projects they put out is more like I mean.
So there's no way we can cost share and get a reduction because of the sheer volume?
I think, if you look at the summary and how I come up with my estimated costs on it, you know, if you look at 2008 and 2009, you know, I was, you know, actual costs, I was doing about $299,000 a mile to $289,000 a mile. In the 2014 project, we got that for $202,000 a mile, just by that was what we, that's what you get by just adding that volume of streets in. And then you probably ask, well, the last project was $252,000. Well, Paul, why did we not make out as well? I mean, I don't think the time was the factor. It was because I had 2 large roads in there that I had to do major reconstructions on, so that the cost of the project went up because I had to do more reconstruction work, not just straight resurfacing work. So, but I think if we stay in that $1.5 million or plus, I think our project stands alone, and I don't think adding in a county project, because it helps us, because then you're spreading a county project with, further distance within the county and stuff like that. So, I think if we're in that, $1.5 million budget plus, I think we can stand on our own.
Well, the first place we gotta start is doing everything. Get an idea of what we're doing.
And the other thing is too, I mean, let's all keep in mind that just because we've bonded for additional costs for the paving doesn't necessarily mean we have to approve the spending when it comes time to do the project.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, you could have an oil crisis, and then it's gonna drive the cost of asphalt up through the roof. I mean, I remember back when we were doing these projects in, mid-2000s, when gas and everything was at $4 or whatever, I mean, we were paying a lot of money for a little amount of asphalt, overall compared to what we've gotten recently.
Okay, we were talking about the engineer's budget, and we managed to skip right over this line on there that said green team. We talk about,
It's for different outreach and project things. We do a lot of marketing at.
well, last year, it's $4,000, and I understand it, okay, but last year we budgeted 0. Now it's $4,000. Advertising promotion, what are we gonna do with that advertising money?
It's helping with the farmers market. It's helping when we table at different events, whether it's at the spring fling or stuff like that. It's for flyers and promoting the township and getting the word out about the different things we're doing in Upper Township.
Do we generate any revenue with the green team when they do the farmer's market?
No.
They don't charge for?
I mean, they charge, I mean, the first market, they essentially spent what they did. The second year they did the market, they had about $2,500 at the end of the season, which, obviously they didn't have the market last year, so this year they're going to use those funds to start to have essentially seed money for advertising in publications and stuff.
I mean, okay, advertising for the green team, I mean, we can put it on UTV, we can put it on our website, that doesn't cost us anything. I gotta believe community service press releases are free.
Most of it's for print.
So the green team actually wants to cut trees, turn them into print, and throw them away. Okay, I can see this.
Touche, Curtis.
This is a committee's budget.
Well, I want to save a tree.
All right, let's pose this question. Since we've had the green team, how have we been advertising? What have we done?
Well, mostly it's flyers and when we're out at different events.
And where did that money come from?
We took it from whether it's, I didn't have a survey that year, so we took it out of there, and we just pinched and pulled from other locations. This year we were just trying to dedicate it, so that would be the only purpose for it, and that's, have a big line. If you want to drop it down to 0, fine. If you want to, give them $1,000 just to, hey, here's a dedicated fund, and that's all you can spend, and, that's what the committee can do.
What are the projects you have planned?
They annually, at the library, we have the butterfly garden. We probably spend about $250 on, plants and seeds for that.
Are they growing milkweed?
They try to, yes. I think they have a couple of milkweed over there.
Yeah, monarch butterflies like milkweed, that kind of thing.
They did work with the Surf Rider Association, and they developed one set of gardens over at Beasley's Point boat ramp, and that probably needs to be a little enhanced. I know that they've also helped out at the guard, the parkway sign, where I'll say over the last couple, 2 years, where we did not have our normal grounds maintenance, and they stepped up and kind of supplemented plantings and taking care of the flowers at the base of there. We host between like 1 to 2 rain barrel demonstration projects, so it's helping fund some of the rain barrel demonstrations. We try to, we do have a cost of $25 a rain barrel. We try to recoup most of our costs, but there's advertising and different costs for that.
And how about the shredding thing, the mass shredding thing they have?
The mass shredding thing, I think that is actually sponsored from the Business Association. I know that we help advertise and, get the word out, with that, but I think the actual cost of the shredding truck, I think the Business Association actually funds that project.
Didn't the township buy a shredder a couple of years ago?
Yes.
Do we use that one?
Oh, we use that, Public Works, I think, was it monthly?
That's free for every week.
Wednesday.
Second Wednesday of every month.
Second Wednesday of every month. There's paper shredding at the Public Works building.
So we're paying for a shredding truck plus we're...
No,
The Business Association.
And it's a one-day event they have on a Saturday.
Okay.
And the shredding at the Public Works is not really open to commercial businesses.
Gotcha,
So
okay.
that shredding event is really geared, because the Business Association puts it on, it's really geared to bring those folks in, even though we get a lot of residents to come out to that.
I see the crossover project.
That's for additional funds to continue the crossover project.
What have we spent
That's
so
for
far?
Strathmere, right?
I think last year,
$30,000.
$30,000.
Is there a reason why that's under you, under engineering, it's not in public works?
It was only because over the years, I put the Strathmere projects in my budget, and it just, that's where, I was...
Years ago, during the
rooting for it.
annexation hearing, we asked them to isolate Strathmere projects and put them somewhere where they're easily defined, so we could find them for the de-annexation stuff, so they would
And
kind
we're
of...
going to speak to that in the Public Works budget also.
Yeah,
Those
We'll
locations.
speak again?
Yeah.
so that's why Strathmere stuff is front and center still probably.
All right.
All right, I think we probably have just enough time to get the court in.
Hopefully.
So if you come up and join us
We're in the court.
and just review your narrative with us. I don't want to delay the start of this evening's meeting. I know,
Well, the court is one of the few...
come on and have a seat, Janet.
Sit in the front row. We can sit here.
Come over here. Have a seat. Go ahead, Curtis, you were going to say?
The court's actually one of the things we do shared services with, and we actually make a couple of shuffles on it, but that being said...
Well, I try not to ask for much. Capital-wise, which is what you seem to focus on, John, it's not an absolute necessity, but it is best practices type of purchase. It's fireproof cabinets for the records we have there. They are expensive. They're approximately $4,000 each. If I could get one a year, that would be wonderful. If I can't, I can live with it.
Okay.
That's,
I
everything else is a general increase.
basically, the only reason we need them is for best practices?
No, it's...
No, it's security.
I mean-
We need, those records are,
I mean, okay. The
What-
fact that we have a fire suppression system in the building doesn't help us?
no.
What's
There's a major fire, those documents will be kept secured, and we're talking...
They're not going to be on
There's a report.
And
proceedings
again,
and-
like Scott said, where there's the statewide dates that you can destroy or keep or whatever, we keep up with that, but some things are forever, as in every office.
But like we're doing with the building department and planning and zoning, is there any way we can digitally screen these?
That would have.
Knowing the court system higher than we are, I would say no.
Because the problem is that then they're worried about,
Is that an
I
accepted
mean,
practice to
I'm-
scan documents?
I'm sorry?
Is it an accepted practice to scan documents for the court?
we don't know yet.
I don't know. It's,
Is that something
it's
you could-
nothing I've ever heard. They do their destruction a little differently than everybody else, as they do everything, just a little bit different.
And
So how often do they purge the records? I mean, like...
I purge them annually, but it goes anywhere from 3 to 15 to forever.
And when you purge them, there's the
We
standard
have
procedure
to
to
do
get
the
rid of.
standard procedure. We have to get the auditor for anything that involves monetary, which almost everything does. We have to send it to the state. The state has to approve it. They have to approve the method of destruction. We have to actually pull it. We give it to Public Works for destruction. Once it's approved, then we have to send it back to the state and tell them, yes, we have done it. But every year, between January and March, I pull whatever is allowed for that schedule.
And it would also require an additional computer purchase and licensing with Ensera, because right now Janet is the only one that has a township computer. All of their other computers and work is done on a state computer through the state direct network, which they can't
Right.
utilize other software programs on. So we would actually have to utilize a second computer, for their stations so that, to access a scan network, so to set up.
Well, that can be put in a capital project,
Right, we can-
firewall cabinet.
Well, I have in their O&E, I have included one file cabinet, one fire-rated fire cabinet in their O&E.
Okay.
Janet had said, if she could purchase one each year, so we have allotted an additional $4,000 in the court's O&E for this year.
But that's not included in your computer stuff.
No. Well, and actually,
Nor is the servicing that we go with.
and actually,
The
our...
scan, yeah, he's talking about the scan.
Yeah.
No,
As
no.
far as
The
scanning
data
goes.
service, maintenance and all that.
And we did put like a file cabinet in our OAD, though it kept our budget the same as last year because we had a higher paid employee retire and a younger, lower paid one come in. So we kept our line item the same, that's where we put the cabinet in,
So in other words, the computers you have are ATS, ACS systems.
Yes.
Correct.
And then you have in-house computers,
One.
I have one in-house computer.
which, how many more you need?
None.
I don't need, she's saying if we needed the scanning capability, we would have to add to that.
So, that's not an ungodly amount of records.
And they're mostly kept, well, a
But
lot of
they're
short kept in
So here's my
but
question,
our
have
vault
we
is
looked
in boxes.
into, and we're running out of storage, by the way, in some of the other areas in the building. I think one of the things we need to look at also is Iron Mountain, or one of those, they're usually secure and they'll store it for, hard paper documents that are, I guess what you would say, readily retrievable, 72 hours or 7 days.
Right. My office right now is under control as far as space goes at the moment.
Yeah, but I mean, I walk into some of these offices, it used to be offices, and now all they have is files and files of documents that we're saving.
Right.
And I think in an effort to get rid of some of this clutter, we probably should look into an Iron Mountain service or something like that.
The service that we looked into, the 3 companies that we've already looked at, the one specific that came in as low number, they already meet the state criteria for the retention process. So when they get rid of something, or they scan it first and then get rid of the physical document, they take it to the next step to the state and go for authorization. The same unique authorization.
I guess what we're getting at is we're talking about starting to do the construction office with scanning everything else, and we allocated potentially 10,000 for each department.
Correct.
I mean, would it make sense to start now and go in the forward, and then take some of that money that's budgeted and consider, off-site storing some of the stuff that could be retrievable?
Well, the problem is with off-site storage, that never goes away. We're just going to keep paying and paying and paying. If we
Except
can-
for that, we're outgrowing this building right now. I mean,
If we
we're
can-
everywhere you-
Believe it or not, that digital process that we're talking about is going to create additional space. It's pretty amazing how fast they will be able to capture it digitally, and then we will free up a lot
I
of
mean, there's
space.
easily 3 rooms in this building that probably are overextended at a minimum, and that's probably being nice.
I can say personally, I saw in Ocean City when we utilized a similar system over there, where we were able to free up space because of the process that we used to digitize. I saw it down the county. I know the county clerk uses the same type of system, as does the prosecutor. So I can't really speak to the AOC portion of it, but I think I'm reasonably sure that we can do this with court records.
Right, we're okay on space at the moment. The security of the storage is what I would like the fireproof cabinet for.
Well, why don't we consider this? Why don't we get a cabinet this year, but we would ask in the upcoming couple of months that perhaps somebody from the courts can look into finding out whether or not we're allowed to do our retention digitally and things like that, and maybe instead of going the rest of the way with the $16,000 over the next couple of years, we can spend the same amount of money on digital retention.
I can reach out without any problem.
All right, super.
Perfect. Sounds like a plan.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Someone like to make a motion to close this workshop?
Motion to close the workshop.
Second?
Call the roll.
Mr. Barr?
Yes.
Mr. Coggins?
Yes.
Mr. Corson?
Yes.
Mr. Young?
Yes.
Mayor Palumbo?
Yes.
Motion is carried.